Welcome back to another episode of PB Ballers and the Tech Warriors podcast. Yes, folks, it's that time of the season, the Asian Cup post-mortem. Unless you've been living under a rock, South Korea was knocked out 2-0 by Jordan in the semifinals. I'm not going to lie, that kind of ruined my weekend, but we're all here to break it down for you. Gentlemen, first thing, I'll just let one of you start and just give your initial impressions. We might want to start with Kevin, who was holding it down during the live stream. Big shout out to him. How are you feeling about the exit, Kevin?
Yeah, cheers, man. Exit's obviously not great, but all things being considered, now that the dust has settled, considering how we played, we've certainly overperformed. But yeah, I mean, 64 years of hurt and 68 to come. It is what it is, and I'm excited to get into the post-mortem with y'all.
Alrighty, I mean, everybody kind of like echoed the disappointment. I guess all I kind of think about now that we're out is like, how would we have felt if we won though? Because I feel like it would have just been like, it wouldn't have felt that much better. We'd have known we'd won like playing terribly. So then all I could think of is like what Son's dad was saying. Maybe it's better that we didn't win.
I don't think people realize that in the semifinal game against Jordan, we literally had 0 shots on target. I believe that's the first time in our history we've gone out without registering a shot on targets. It set all kinds of terrible records. In the knockout stages, we beat Australia and Saudi Arabia, but it took last-minute equalizers, some dead ball heroics from our big guys just to get that done. So public sentiment in Korea has been terrible for this national team. So I just wanted to ask you guys, what's the next step? Do we fire Klinsmann?
His plan was, I'm going to go back to Korea and analyze, what went wrong, right? And then that morphed to, I'm going home to California for a couple weeks. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be back in Europe meeting with Kang-in and meeting with Min-jae and all those guys, right? And the thing is, like, this guy is so ignorant and so dumb because that would not help anything. Those are your three best players. Why do you need to keep meeting with them? What do you need to keep doing? Like, it's just, he basically just says he wants to waste time kicking it with his homies that are good players. He's not actually going to put in the effort and be like, you know what? I should be there in March in Korea for the beginning of the K-League season, actually scouting new players that can make this squad better. Because at the end of the day, the midfield and the defense are where the problems is. And he needs to find some replacements in Korea for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are bang on. I think the writing has been on the wall with Klinsmann since his appointment. I mean, a lot of us here are based stateside, so we know his history with the States. And I mean, if I needed any confirmation as to what type of rodeo we'd be on with Klinsmann, all I need to hear was that Y Scout story and how he's watching the K League through that effectively. So yeah, I mean, everything that's we're being told, everything that we're reviewing kind of goes in line with what to expect with Klinsmann. He may seem like he knows what he's talking about, but all things being considered, there's too many big questions that continue to be asked, even when it comes to him managing personnel in a tournament. Like for starters, why is Heung-min being run to the ground? And then no wonder he's gassed against Jordan, who didn't play a single game of extra time once they got into the elimination rounds. So even regards how he deals with the press, just the moves that he makes during the 90 minutes of a football match, and even the personnel that he brings up, there's just question marks everywhere.
I just think that the way he's behaved since he's arrived in Korea has been a problem. Like Kevin said, refusing to live in the country full time, claiming that he's been watching the K-League boys through video apps like Y Scout. It's just been a really poor roadmap in terms of how you deal with the press and also how you deal with the fans of the national team. I think any other country would be crazy for the manager not to live there while, they're in charge of the national team. It'd be like me being in charge of Scotland and working remotely from Seoul. Now, if we look, guys, at the public reaction over here in Korea, there's been a lot of news reports about a potential buyout fees for Jurgen Klinsmann. Now, this isn't confirmed, okay? This could be wrong, but I believe buyout fee range could be anywhere between 50억 to 70억, which in American dollars, guys, a very rough estimate can be anywhere from 3 to 5.5 million US dollars. The question for you gentlemen is twofold. Is one, even if the KFA does have the money to fire him, who would you bring in to replace him? And would it be a foreign coach or would you guys go domestic?
Oh man, I'm gonna be quick with it because honestly, I've always been like so despondent with our football association and practically speaking, just the way that it's been run and a bunch of chaebol heads focusing on making money. I really haven't ever felt since like maybe 2010 that there was a direction that was being moved in the right direction. This may be old, outdated sentiments here, but for me, I'm always saying give Sunil Gunas a shot. And then for me, my background, my reasoning with that is not only understanding Ki Sung-young and Lee Chung-young back in 2009, but also taking Turkey third place in 2002. Because he's also had that stint in the K-League, I believe he has acumen even as a foreign manager to succeed within a Korean environment. My rapport and my evidence or support, I always have that pipe dream, but when it comes to putting a serious diagnosis and next step with the KFA, I'm more despondent, and I'll let you guys chat about it.
I would hope that Chung Min-gyu and the Hyundai guys do have the money to pay off the buyout. It's kind of a weird, just honestly, feeling to know that there are reports out there that basically the KFA kind of honestly put a benchmark on the dude, right? Because the buyout clause went up if he made the semifinals. So it's almost as if they're saying that's what we wanted you to get to, and then we're not firing you, which is kind of disappointing and just weird contract negotiation from the KFA. But honestly, they should pay it. They should. And I'm going to make for my pick as the next manager something that Jason in our group chat, Jason Lee is going to love this. I'm going to say Ryan Mason. He's been talking about this for a long time. The guy that has been the interim manager of Spurs multiple times with Son and Min. I'm just going to say, I've heard everything that Jason said about him, and it sounds like a good idea.
All great points. I'm not sure I agree with Jason about the Ryan Mason point. I know his Spurs bias is pretty big there. Ryan Mason has not managed a single national team or a first flight club team, but I see the vision in terms of a young progressive manager who can connect with the younger generation and hasn't been successful enough to the point where we cannot afford him. I think if we're looking at more realistic candidates, I would say that a Hervé Renard, assuming he doesn't ask to break the bank. I did like Kevin's suggestion about the Turkish manager who managed that team in 2002. Another thing for me is I would just ask Kim Pang-gon to come back because he's the guy who hired Paulo Bento. I think he understood there were structural problems in the KFA when he left, and I think that the players respect him. If you watch the Malaysia post game and him saying hi to all 26 players, I believe, shows you kind of the respect that this generation of players has for him, and I think he plays progressive ball. He's a fantastic manager that I think would heed the call to come back to South Korea and save us. But again, guys, and this is something that I'll let you guys jump on here, no matter what happens with Klinsmann, he's just a symptom of a disease. The main disease, as we know, is HDC group and Chung Mong-kyu. And maybe I'll let you guys jump in what you think about the president of our dear KFA.
It's sad that this guy manages us so poorly. Honestly, this guy, from what Jason has told me, and I was kind of shocked about this when he told me about this, Chung Mong-kyu hired Jurgen Klinsmann not for any coaching reason whatsoever. He just wanted to get to know a lot more people that run FIFA. And he knew that Jurgen gets to, bump shoulders with him a lot of times at a lot of FIFA gatherings. And, Chung Mong-kyu is interested in one day having enough networking connections to run for and win the FIFA presidency. Will that ever happen? Who knows? But if that is his reason for hiring a guy like Jurgen Klinsmann to manage his national team, that's kind of sad. But we have to have it out there as something that there's been a lot of reporting in Korea as that's what his idea was, right? The other sort of story that kind of went out in the Korean media was Cha Lee and his dad Cha Bum-kun were really instrumental in helping Jurgen Klinsmann and Chung Min-gyu to get in connection, right? A lot of people are like, oh, Chaduri probably one day wants to manage the national team, so he was happy to hear this happen, right? Or happy to get the links reported in the post. But in the end, this is all just a political thing from Chung Min-gyu. So just he's running this KFA a little fun little business hobby that will further his political aims in football. And it's sad. It shouldn't be like this. And to be honest, at the end of the day, also, he should not be running our football federation. He should not be running it because he's doing a pretty poor job. And, these players that are on this squad deserve a lot better than what Jurgen Klinsmann is giving them on the pitch. You could put a better squad together in terms of personnel, and you could put better tactics together in terms of that as well. And you could win this tournament with this player pool that we have.
Yeah, I think the public heat that the KFA has been receiving. I've also caught wind, and you guys can confirm or deny whether or not this is true, but the criticism towards the KFA now, after this Asian Cup exit, is definitely more heightened, or there's more eyes on the matter than ever before. Literally from January 2013 up to this point, if not for the individual talents that we currently have, you might as well still consider the dark ages of football. Given 2022 definitely killed that era since we made it to a knockout stages, but Stilicho was not the answer. Throwing Shin Tae-young in super last minute was not the answer. And even before that, Hong Myung-bo being thrown in very early as well was not the answer. The way that the Football Association has operated this national team just based upon results and just based upon the managers that come in, what they have to deal with, or the type of managers that they are, I will put a special asterisk with Bento because he did do a good job, but he's also made it public. It wasn't easy working alongside the KFA. So an amalgamation of all this intel, my experiences supporting this team this closely tells me that leadership leaves a lot to be desired.
Great points by Kevin and Mike. And this is nothing new though, guys. Chung Myung-gyu has a history of not communicating well with the public. He has a history of just doing whatever he wants in terms of making selections for the national team. I believe that in this hiring process, when we ended up hiring Jurgen Klinsmann, the recommendation of the technical committee at the time, led by Michael Mueller, was not to hire Jurgen Klinsmann. But if reports are to believe, Chung Myung-gyu basically hijacked that process and said, no, he's my guy. Screw all the other candidates that you've been talking to. Let's just hire him and his backroom staff. I believe it's gotten to the point, guys, where we're having petitions out in South Korea asking the government to do something about this association. They're asking for Chung Myung-gyu to step down. But again, and I don't know if most people know this, the KFA is controlled entirely by HTC Group. There's nothing the government can do at all legally to fix this situation. So it's going to come down to Chung Myung-gyu resigning or having a change of heart. This is something we discussed in the group chat when Klinsmann arrived in Korea a few days ago. The public reaction to him arriving in Incheon was icy, to say the least. And I'm wondering if any of you guys saw the press conference he had when he arrived, and maybe we can break that down a bit.
Just hearing him sort of outline his plans of what he's going to do at that press conference, like that came off really tone deaf. Him basically saying like he didn't have any intention of changing how he approached coaching the national team was tone deaf and just like really sad, because he had to have realized like, oh, my entire method of coaching this national team thus far has not worked, right? I have relied on, working remotely, watching players on Y-Scout, or relying on my staff to pick players from the K-League that they think are really good. I've done a lot of work, out in Europe, meeting players. That has led to a tournament performance where we were just frankly like subpar and got thoroughly beaten by a team that was ranked far lower than us. Initial reaction would have been from him like, oh, I have to change things. He should have thought, I should likely start living in Korea. I should likely start scouting more matches. And I should look to work on fixing my defense, because quite a lot of the defenders that I picked for this tournament struggled a lot. Yeah, he said, he's going to continue to do things the same way he's done them. And he says that like, that's how national teams are managed, or like, that's how it works. And it's just really condescending too, to answer reporters and be like, hey guys, I like your question. And also I know more than you. Every single coach coaches a different way. Like, don't try to make it as if like everyone coaches this way. Like, you're just being a jerk, or you're just being condescending, or you're just trying to be a know-it-all. It's sad that you don't know that this is not working. Like, this hasn't worked.
Yeah, I've only caught snippets of the interview, and I'm only just reading reports on it because Clinton honestly pisses me off. But it's more or less the same. Like, he's not really taking much responsibility. He's talking about how we should have won one-on-one battles against Jordan, talking more about how players can do better, but he's not talking about his game plan altogether. When he talks about what he's going to do, he says absolutely nothing, but his team's going to go back and review. It's all like tin pot answers that I give like on Football Manager if I just want to type out something custom. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing genuine that comes off it because it just all feels so tin pot. Him, again, you guys mentioned this earlier, but talking about going to Europe to go see Min-jae, Kang-in, and Sunny is such a waste of time. Meanwhile, Kwon Kyung-won is having a great time starting at St. Mirren and Celtic. Like, where's word on that, bro? Like, where's word on how we're going to fix the key issues in our side even? You know what I mean? Like, I would just a sliver of that. And look, maybe I missed it because I didn't catch the whole interview, but the way that he's been talking or the reports that I've been reading is just consistent with how Klinsmann talks, and he's just waffling about, bro. I got nothing really to pull from what he's said since he's returned to Korea.
To Klinsmann, this job is more of a hobby, like a side quest that he's on. Because the guy's almost 60. He's turning 60 this year. He's not a young manager by any means. So you'd expect someone of his age and experience to be a little more serious about this job. To me, honestly, I think the main reason he took this job was the fact that he would just have another chance to lead a national team at the 2026 World Cup because it's going to be held in the United States where he lives right now. I think that's part of the reason why he wanted this job. If the World Cup wasn't being held in North America in a few years' time, he would not have taken this position. I have no doubt about that. He's really handled this entire situation very, very poorly. And yeah, speaking of players, guys, it was clear from the beginning, even with Klinsmann at the helm, that there was a lot of holes in this roster still, whether that was in the central defensive midfield position or with the right-sided center backs or even fullbacks. So post-mortem Asian Cup, gentlemen, most problematic position for us going forward after this tournament, and maybe a position of strength that you're not so worried about.
Yeah, man. Also, let me do a quick addendum because I said Kwon Kyung-won was Kwon Hyuk-kyu at St. Mirren, so that's what I meant earlier. Regardless, yeah. Where is our biggest pain point? It is the mother-loving six, bro. We do not have someone that can responsibly play the six for us. Hwang In-bum gets exposed because of it, and our entire team folds so easily whenever a player on opposition wins the ball from our six. Park Hyung-woo is not it. I can't believe I miss Chung Woo-young. I'm like holding back tears as I process that, but that's also where I was seeing Kim Tae-hwan play and saying, I can't believe I miss Lee-young. That's another symptom of the state of the national team and how it's been developing or degrading rather in front of my eyes. A positive though from this Asian Cup performance is that Seo Young-woo is a player. I really, really liked him on the left, and knowing that he can also play on the right is very, very encouraging. We've had fullback issues since Kingdom Come, really. So knowing that we have one answer in that role is very, very encouraging.
I really like what Kevin said because I was actually going to say Seo Young-woo was a player we don't have to worry about for a long time. Like that guy looked great in the middle for us. Or I mean, not in the middle, on the left. He looked great as a left back. And we haven't, been able to look forward to a young fullback in the national team for a while. Like we've been kind of relying on like nearing 30s guys or in their 30s guys for the past couple of years, and that's been kind of rough. So we have a guy in his 20s that's a fullback for us. That's great. But yeah, the problem is definitely it's the midfield. This midfield that Jurgen Klinsmann created for this tournament was absolutely dysfunctional. So when you think about like how the midfield worked at the 2022 World Cup, right? It was Hwang In-bum, it was Lee Jae-sung, and it was Jung Woo-young. And that was more functional for a couple reasons. The first reason was that like Lee Jae-sung was 2 years younger and he had more legs and he was in better form. And then also Jung Woo-young is just a miles better defensive midfielder than Park Hyung-woo is. When you replace Jung Woo-young with Park Hyung-woo and then you put in a 2 years older Lee Jae-sung who's not in the same form he was, like you have a very dysfunctional midfield where Hwang In-bum's going to be exposed and just left on an island to fend for himself and get tired out and get incredibly injured. He looked like he was limping in multiple games towards the end of that run because he was so tired from all the running he had to do. Jurgen Klinsmann's job now for the next couple of months or however long he has this job is he needs to put together a functional midfield because we're never going to be able to win games consistently without a functional midfield. Kang-in doesn't play in the midfield really in this system. Heung-min isn't a great midfielder in general. He's a good dribbler. He can track back and he's good defensively, but that's not where he's best used. He should be finishing goals and scoring chances. And then like we need a functional midfield. Like that's what we need right now. Jurgen Klinsmann needs to find out, is he going to get new players to do that? Or, is he going to look farther into different K-League players or different players in Europe? But that's his big project because we had a dysfunctional midfield that like could not really like create anything of use, even though we usually had like 60 to 80% possession every match. Having a match where you have 70% possession and then 0 shots on target, that's absolutely like inexcusable. Like that's an awful performance. Like with Hwang In-bum, like Kevin, like I don't know, like I don't think we should get rid of him yet. I think he still has a couple more like useful years to him. At the end of the day, like he could be improved upon because he's nearing his 30s. And I think like what he does best is still like not creative enough. I mean, like, yeah, like let's talk about this, right? This guy was able to,
Okay.
in most matches, get us 70-80% of possession, but then not really create much. That's partly the system around him, but then also like, is he creative enough? Could starting Hong Hyun-suk with the same amount of possession create more shots and more shots on goal? It's possible.
I don't deny that Hong Young-suk can provide something that Hwang In-bum maybe cannot. But the reason why I still ride for Hwang In-bum is look at the first group stage matches and just peep the type of impression he made. He scored our opener. He made the pass that led to Korea's penalty against Jordan in the group stages. He also was the one that flipped the ball in midfield to Kang-in on the right-hand side to score our third against Bahrain. And yeah, I guess I can understand the criticism of Hwang In-bum not being creative enough, but I still think that he provides an efficiency in us moving the ball in midfield that makes me almost sometimes just forget about Lee Jae-sung. There's a pass that I see and I'm like, that needs to be made, and 8 times out of 10 he hits it. Like that's why like midfield metronome is a good word for him. It is very, very cruel that a lot of the goals that we conceded came from a missed pass from him or him stripped off the ball. But also we saw a lot of those plays from Hwang In-bum after she had been playing 120 plus minute games. Like against Jordan, he looks like a shadow of himself, man. But I think that comes down more to game management rather than his actual acumen and his actual class, because I think he's still got it.
Yeah.
Go on, Albert, do your worst.
I hate to say this, but Hwang In-bum is the most overrated player on this Korean national team. And I want to clarify my comments before I have some idiots on social media jump on me. I'm not saying he isn't our midfield metronome. He is. He is probably, besides Lee Kang-in, one of the most talented players on the ball and probably one of our better passers. What I'm saying is that people overrate him in terms of thinking that he is what Lee Kang-in is supposed to be, okay? They think that, to make a basketball analogy, he is Steve Nash dribbling the ball up the court. He should always have, we should always run our offense through him. He's just a secondary cog on a very good championship team. I don't know whether it's because of his development in Europe, not going to the best leagues, his agent kind of screwing him over. But I think that he does have a future in this national team because he's not 30 yet. But guys, he's getting to the point now where he is kind of what he is, if that makes sense. He makes some very questionable passes in the final third in his own defensive half as well. He is very suspect defensively. And he's the type of guy that needs at least another number 6 covering next to him, maybe 2 number 6s next to him, for us to really not worry about him turning the ball over in midfield. I agree that he was definitely tired and overused in this tournament, but still some of the mistakes that he was making just cannot happen. And I don't think he's as creative enough as people think for us to give him these free passes that we've been giving. Because when I've seen people criticize, it seems like, oh, Hwang In-bum is always exempt from that, and if we criticize him, we're crazy. No. He has been a very big problem on this national team, in my opinion, for quite some time. I think that there will be some players coming out that are going to replace him in the pecking order soon, and I see Mike eager with his mic, so I'll let him jump in real quick.
We have to experiment with other combinations in the midfield and just see if the results that we get from those types of combinations are better. It would be really lovely to see, what happens when you actually drop Lee Jae-sung and Hwang In-bum from the midfield and play Baek Seung-ho and you play Hong Hyun-suk. And then in terms of like the central defensive midfielder, we could see, what Park Jin-sup provides in that role. We could see what Lee Sun-min provides in that role, or even we could see what St. Mirren's youngster on loan, Kwon Hyuk-gyu, gives in that role as well. I think that like there are going to be matches where he's going to be really needed over the next couple of years. But Albert's right, like, these misplaced passes, or just the fact that like in terms of like speed and dribbling speed, sometimes he slows down the game a little bit too much. It's the same thing right now with Lee Jae-sung as well. Like Lee Jae-sung can slow down the game too much when it needs to be up the tempo. So there's just a lot of reasons why we need to look a little bit further and sort of try a couple more things. Hwang In-bum is a great player, and he's had a very solid career for the national team. It's just a matter of like, is there more that we can get there? Can we find some different like strengths? Can we find a different profile in our midfield? And is there a way where, we can actually play the game a little faster and not slow it down all the time, and not kind of like get into these patterns where we're just kind of like passing it around a horseshoe? And can we make more decisive actions and more creative, like lofted balls more more of the time. Like Lee Kang-in, sometimes he'll get into the middle and he'll dictate and do these things, and it's just passes that you just don't really see Hwang making or thinking of. And like you're absolutely right though, Kevin. Like Hwang In-beom's best contributions were that late run into the box where he gets there late and he times his run well and he's able to make an important contribution or an important pass. But still, I just think that there's opportunity to find something better there.
Don't get me wrong. I definitely do understand the sentiment that we need to cycle through more options to see what our best center midfield pairing or three-man midfield can be. Again, that's homework that Klinsmann needs to do, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation if he did his homework in advance and we had more options to tweak with rather than just like being married to Park Kyung-woo alongside Hwang In-beom. I think this is why Hwang In-beom's getting so much heat. But I think, oh, and also, Albert, the folks that are saying that Hwang In-beom's game's got to be similar to Kang-in or they provide similar things are absolute morons because Hwang In-beom, like you said, is that second cog system. He is that second cog player that sits just behind the offense, and he exists so that the offense can most shine and not worry so much about spending energy winning possession back or getting possession in those spaces. He's the one that delivers the ball from those spaces to maximize offensive opportunities. And Hwang In-chan is a player that feeds off of players that maximizes opportunities. Heung-min, obviously, and Kang-in is just a maestro, so he can create it himself or he can do it himself if he's in that space. So considering how our front three now is just like operating and considering their player profiles, I think Hwang In-beom complements them really, really well. The only goddamn issue is that we don't have someone to support Hwang In-beom in that role. So then on top of him having to do almost two roles at once like Ki Sung-young once had to do, when he's exposed, it looks bad and all fingers are on him. I want there to be opportunities for the national team to consider other center midfield pairings or even, give Hong Hyun-suk a role and let Hwang In-beom rest. I think that's totally fine. Matter of fact, I would love to see that during international friendlies so our European exports don't need to travel thousands of miles to play cute friendlies. You know what I mean? Like, we know what Hwang In-beom is capable of. We know what role he plays. And he's been in this team long enough where nothing should come as a surprise for him. So, again, it just comes down to our footballing team outside the pitch to manage players and consider options to maximize what we can bring out of the midfield. Hwang In-beom is a set piece in our midfield, locked in. We know what he can provide. We know his proficiencies. We know his deficiencies. Let's move on and let's try to find something that can complement that. And if we find something better, fine by me. But as far as I'm concerned, we have not found that something that is better. And look, I got eyes on Kwon Kyu and Paek Seung-ho, especially considering the recent moves. So there's opportunity out there. But if I'm talking about right here, right now, especially after the Asian Cup, Hwang In-beom is here to stay, and nothing really changed my mind when it comes to that.
I mean, the first thing I want to say is I'm glad that Kevin is also struggling with the name Kwon Hyuk-kyu. I think it just doesn't really like roll off the tongue very well. Honestly, like he's right because Hwang In-beom has to stay because he's the only person that's been tested in this role. And the only person to fault on that though is Jurgen Klinsmann. He had many friendlies to try out and test different things. He just didn't choose to. It's really weird with this guy, right? We talked about how we liked some of the substitutions that Jurgen Klinsmann was making in these matches at the Asian Cup, and they were working. And there's merits to be said about that, right? Like being able to diagnose and look at a match and be like, oh, these are the players that are not working right now. These are the ones I need to take out. And let me think of who I should put in for them. Like that's a good thing. But the sad thing though is like, what if it's your fault that they're not performing in the first place? Like essentially you're making substitutions to fix your problems. That's kind of the thing that like we should be talking about with Klinsmann, right? Like for all the times that we're like, oh, Jurgen, you made a really good substitution. We should also be like, hey, but why did you start that guy in the first place? That's the thing. Like Park Kyung-woo, like you had to sub him out many times because he was struggling. Why was he there in the first place? Or like, Ikije, right? You had to sub him out at halftime multiple times and then you finally dropped him. Why was he there in the first place? It's these problems where he's not setting out a good team and he's realizing it 45 minutes in. we shouldn't be clapping at him for realizing 45 minutes in that he's made a bad lineup.
Speaking of struggling players, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't end this little segment with talking about Cho Gue-sung. I can't believe I almost forgot. Gentlemen, we know the CDM role has been an issue, but the number 9 is also a problem. Cho Gue-sung, I think, looked even worse than Heung-min. I don't know if people watched the Jordan game, but that little dive in the box was pathetic. He's really fallen from grace in terms of what he had at the 2022 World Cup when he scored those 2 goals against Ghana. I mean, there's not much to say, guys. He was useless in the air with the ball at his feet. It just looked like a completely different player, and I see Kevin wanted to go, and I'm sorry for cutting him off there, but I mean, guys, Kevin, am I wrong here in saying that it looked like his evil twin brother was out there, just considering how bad he was? I mean, you were on the live stream watching him. I mean, your reaction said it all, right?
Yeah, bro. I mean, I think you're bang on. I have nothing really to argue when it comes to what the hell Cho Gue-sung's performance was. I think he had like 3, 4 headers inside the 6-yard box, one hitting the post and the rest of them being off target. We talk about that pathetic dive, which basically encapsulates Korea's game plan or lack thereof, or the desperation. Like, there was just something beyond it being an embarrassing play that sticks with me. But we also can't forget in extra time against Saudi, when he had that chance and he was away, he passed it to, I don't know who was on his left, but that was like a clear-cut opportunity that he should have absolutely shot. I don't know if it's just because he's ice cold because the Danish league stopped well earlier. Yo, I mean, if you even think about Oh Hyung-gyu, who made his cameo against Australia, and even when he was playing against Malaysia, he was well more impressionable. And Oh Hyung-gyu won us a penalty against Malaysia as well. And if that tournament is anything to go by, Oh Hyung-gyu should be getting, excuse me, more minutes. And Cho Gue-sung is a pretty boy, yeah, but he's not untouchable. And Klinsmann better recognize that too. He's not untouchable. He didn't provide the business. You gotta call players out pendant on performance, and he must do better, meaning that that space should be open for other players. And that's just the nature of the beast right now, and there are no arguments that could have me feel otherwise, especially considering how underwhelming Cho Gue-sung was. Respectfully, of course.
I like how you added respectfully at the end there to him. I mean, like, we respect everything that he did for the nation at the 2022 World Cup. The other thing I kind of like want to ask is, do y'all think that this is just a coaching thing, though? Because Bento had him looking real good. Bento had him looking real good. Could it just be that, like, Jurgen's just not really working him well on the training ground to, like, get him ready for these matches? And the other thing about Jurgen, right, is, like, Jurgen was a striker, yo. How is he not getting his boy ready?
That's kind of what makes it worse. He's a striker, yet he isn't able to consider other striking options when our starting striker is cold. And when it comes to is he not being coached well enough, you can't coach headers in the 6-yard box. You either got it or you don't. Like, strikers, you either got that killer instinct or you don't. And if you're away in the 89th minute, 2 goals down, and you opt to dive rather than take a shot because on your left foot, my brother, that is on you. You decide to pass it when it's a clear opportunity to take a shot, and it's the go-ahead goal potentially in extra time during a knockout stage game. My brother, that is on you. So unless he does something to turn up in the Danish league and then it translates for the national team, man, let's see some other strikers because I've seen enough.
Facts. I mean, Kevin just hit the nail on the head there. I mean, that's not a coaching issue when you miss wide open headers in the box, when you turn down an open net because you're scared of missing. I don't know if people have been watching Cho Gue-sung for a while. There are times when he gets a clear ball in the box and the dude jumps and he just misses it. I don't know how many times he had a cross in the Asian Cup where he out jumps his man, but at the same time he just doesn't get his hand on the ball. This isn't a coaching issue. He's just not very good. He's not as good as we thought he was. And I think more and more as we see the way he's performing, that performance against Ghana in the World Cup was definitely an aberration, not the norm. It could be wrong, but he had a ton of chances at this Asian Cup, but that it just came down to him. It's not, everything isn't Jurgen's fault. He is mostly responsible for this terrible performance, but Cho Gue-sung really needs to take some responsibility for the way he's been playing, the manner in which he's doing so, because the whole point of him was to have a target man who could win aerial duels. He doesn't win aerial duels at all. He's as useless. It's like having me out there who's not even, I don't even hit 6 feet, and I would be trying to win headers out there, and I'd do just as good of a job as Cho Gue-sung was doing. And Kevin's right. Oh Young-gyu is an option. Maybe we play Sonny as the false nine as he ages. It's an embarrassing situation, and he definitely is an issue that we had in this team. And I guess as we wrap up this segment in terms of players at the Asian Cup, I want you guys, if you can, to give me maybe 3 players from the squad that we had at the Asian Cup that we should definitely move on from and that maybe we shouldn't call up for the March qualifiers against Thailand.
This is a fun question because it's kind of hard to just choose just 3. Like, can we get rid of like 10 of them? But let's go with 3. Jung Seung-yeon.
You can pick more than
No,
3.
No.
You can pick more than 3 if you
we
want.
should not be calling this guy up anymore. We don't need to see any more of that guy. Maybe Kim Tae-hwan? I mean, he was solid at right back, but I think we could upgrade sooner. Like, I think we could probably try out Hwang Jae-won. I think we could try out Lee Tae-suk from FC Seoul. So that's maybe another guy. A third guy. Okay. This is probably easy. Park Young-woo. No. We don't need to be calling up that guy anymore either. We should be looking more often at Park Jin-sup, and we should be looking more at Lee Sun-min, and we should be considering adding Paek Sung-ho and Kwon Hyuk-gyu to our roster.
Yeah, bro. I mean, you really could go down the squad list and be like, oh yeah, you don't need to be here. You don't need to be here. Why are you even here? And that's just more of like assessing Klinsmann's acumen, and it should have been painfully obvious even before his tournament started, but I digress. So I'm going to try to take this question with a little more integrity in the sense that I'm going to focus on our starters and highlight who should be like conscientiously phased out considering what sort of vision we have for the future for the national team. And I guess one of the lads that would be on that list would be Kim Young-kwon. Don't get me wrong, I love the lad. He's an absolutely terrific servant for the national team. He will always be my corner kick goal merchant cult hero, especially against Germany and Portugal. I will have some of that any day of the week. He's a great personality. He's been a good captain when he steps up. And he's definitely one of the brighter talents that we can be proud of, who's held most of his career in East Asia. But he's 33. And against Jordan, he looked a bit wayward, which is more characteristic of how he was like around the 2014 Brazil era. And it's been like phased out of his game, but seeing that return, especially at 33, especially when we needed him most, especially when Min-jae wasn't around, like, thank you, your time has come, and respectfully, it's time to move on. And I really do mean this respectfully because I really do respect Kim Young-kwon. Park Young-woo, I've had enough. I know he's 30. I know he is supposed to be our 6th, but I've had enough. If I miss Chung Woo-young, bro, you are not the answer. You are not the one. Also respectfully, because like honestly, there should be an asterisk with this in that like I feel like us as the Fighting Stripes collective, no matter the level of quality that you have, the fact that you're repping our national team and you're doing the best, you deserve nothing but the utmost respect for that. But game recognized game, and if you got it, you got it, and if you don't, you don't. So I mean, you get your flowers, but you also get your criticism, right? Park Young-woo is the exact type of player that falls in that line. Because of that, I'm good with seeing you, my bro. So that's that. I don't know, man, because like right, Kim Tae-hwan, he's 34. He's not nearly as offensive as So Young-woo. I kept calling him on the watch-alongs our Korean Antonio Valencia, because all that he would do when going offensive is take it out on his right foot, push it out wide. I mean, push it out with the outside of his right foot to whip it across. And clearly that didn't work up to Saudi Arabia because everyone just knows that's the only move that he has. However, he's not really one of those core players like Kim Young-kwon is because he's a recent appearance. And again, it begs the question with Klinsmann because when he said that he was going to bring in new faces, it was going to be towards building for the future. But this man is 34, so what are you really doing? Lee Jae-sung, he's 31. I would like to say him to stay a little bit longer, but I do recognize that we have similar players of his ilk and now like of growing or of better quality. Again, this is with the utmost respect to Lee Jae-sung because of what he's provided for our national team and because he was pretty much, for me, I remember fondly a bright spot during the dark ages of like 2017 or so. I respect the hell what he's done for us. I respect his game. Hwang Hee-chan is around. Hong Hyun-suk is around. Kang-in is around. We should be looking to progress beyond always depending on Lee Jae-sung as an option. Yeah, those are my 3. And I guess in order of seriousness, it's Park Kyung-woo, Kim Young-won, and then Lee Jae-sung.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my pick. I like the Lee Jae-sung shout.
Oh,
It's
nice.
a brave one, but we're getting to a point now where we have enough players that play similar kinds of styles, and I think that if Mines are relegated this year, which they could be, Lee Jae-sung could be playing second division football, or he could end up back in the K-League to finish out his career. But as we finish this segment, guys, I'm going to say the goalies. Kim Seung-gyu tore his ACL. He will not be ready for another 6 months at least. Cho Yeon-woo was great to prove me wrong this tournament. I would still call him up, but I would call up two fresh faces, maybe a Kim Dong-jun at Jeju, Kim Jun-hong at Jump Hyundai, and also the goalie at Gangwon, Lee Kwang-yeon, who's had some experience with some of the younger youth teams in the national team setup. I think it's time that Klinsmann stops being lazy and looks at different players, because guys, in the friendlies before the Asian Cup, he would use practically the same group of like 20 to 25 guys and maybe rotate a few at a time. But I don't know if that's a symptom of him being lazy and not seeing these players in person, but it's definitely a problem. And kind of as we move to our last segment, guys, next match is going to be in March, I believe, at home against Thailand. The game after that will also be against Thailand, but that one will be away, I believe, in Bangkok. Do we think that we win this game against Thailand, considering how we've looked against teams like Jordan and Malaysia? I'm not so sure. And I think, honestly, since I think the game against Thailand is going to be at the World Cup Stadium in Seoul, I don't know if the people are going to show up to boo Klinsmann or if they're going to show up to root on the national team. Just general thoughts about how we feel going into this game against Thailand. I saw Kevin sighing, so I'll let him jump real quick on it.
Yeah, man. I mean, when it comes to crowd reactions in the game, it might be a little bit of both, showing love to our players, but showing our disdain for Klinsmann considering his run, which is pretty valid. Unfortunately, I'm expecting more of the same, of him just like bringing up a squad because he can't be asked to do his homework. He can't be asked to experiment beyond just like the 15 players that he's constantly relying on. The reason why I feel like that might be why I feel so strongly about this is because even when interviewers were talking to Heung-min about how this could be his last tournament, he said maybe. And this is a gentleman who, at the last World Cup, said he would drive his body to the ground and play for the national team as long as he can. So for a player like Sonny, a captain of his ilk, because he is a top professional, as we've seen in his club and national career, for him to change his mind like that, which is extremely drastic in my opinion, it's really, really indicative of what he has to go through with the coaching team for Korea. So if trends and patterns are to be followed, I expect to see our A team. Yeah, we should see starters, but if you have any acumen, you should also be seeing unfamiliar faces, fresh faces, especially on the bench. If you were brave and you were doing your homework in advance, then that's two birds, one stone of getting the 3 points while trying something new. But again, Jurgen is not cut of that ilk. We'll get 3 points. World Cup qualifiers are important. Our boys know this. It might be more of that zombie football of us just like looking like 11 individuals desperate to get a result versus a cohesive team. There might be more disjointed football from Korea, but it is what it is, and we got to move regardless. So I'm going to say 3 points home and away, but it's not going to be pretty.
Honestly, like if we stay playing the way that we played at the Asian Cup, I could certainly see us like eking out a win at home, but going away to Thailand, playing them in their house, I could see us losing that game. I could see us not playing well enough to be able to beat them in that game. You know what I mean? Like we could have the same exact game plan, same exact sort of play style, and as long as the Thailand, coaching staff does their homework, they see the blueprint of how to stop it, right? You know what I mean? Like they see the blueprint of using aggressive pressing, force defensive players into mistakes, or present them very few options, isolate Heung-min in the midfield, clog his passing lanes, force him to make quick decisions or dribble long distances to connect to offense. Like there's a way to do this. So I could certainly see Thailand beating us at their house. They are definitely the second best team in this group of 4. 2 teams go on to the next round of qualifying and qualify for the 2027 Asian Cup. Like we beat Singapore and China easily, because those are two just really bad Asian sides. Like China has always been pretty bad, and Singapore is getting better, but they're not good yet at all. But Thailand, like, they've been going to the Asian Cup for the past couple of years, and they're good. They're getting better. So I could see us struggling with them for sure.
So my question is, lose one of the games against Thailand, fire him for sure, right, boys?
Yo, my brother Albert is playing 4D chess in his mind, man. Yeah, just get the bare minimum, but it confirms enough of our fears that Klinsmann is out. And yeah, I'm pretty much in the camp of Klinsmann out. So if that happens, then silver linings, baby.
Whatever it takes to get us to decide to fire this guy. Yeah. We, if there's a loss where it's embarrassing and, they're Thailand's beating us 3-0 or 2-0 at home, like, that's not a good sign. And yeah, they should fire him. But the thing is, like, they should have fired him now. It hasn't happened yet. Like, is it going to happen after that? He's still likely going to win this group in World Cup qualifying and go on to the next round. It's probably how it's going to happen. Like, even if you lose or struggle in your 2 matches against the second best team, if you can beat the other 2 bad teams every single time, you're still probably going to win or be in second place. So I don't necessarily foresee like this round of qualifying being the one where Klinsmann struggles enough to get fired. But then, like, you run into the problem where you're like, oh, you are now in the final round of Asian qualifying. You're trying to qualify for the World Cup and you're playing harder teams. You're either probably going to be in a group with Iran, Iraq, Australia, Japan. Like, one of those big boys is going to be in there. Saudi Arabia is going to be in the mix. Jordan's now possibly going to be in the mix. A lot of these other teams that we struggle with might be in the mix. So he would struggle then, but then you're running out of time and you're replacing a manager too close to the actual event to get ready for it. This whole situation with Jurgen Klinsmann is an absolute mess. I don't really see a good outcome in there. And that's just, it's frustrating and like kind of maddening that overall the timeline just doesn't look great to actually make a meaningful change that would impact this national team in a positive way, unless it's now. In the next couple of months, like in the next couple of weeks, we should be doing this. They should just be deciding like he's not good enough and getting rid of him.
Kevin, any closing thoughts?
Honestly, man, we just move as national team supporters. Like, if you've been national team supporter for the long haul, you realize the games, the scumbaggery, the foolishness, and it's just same dance, different tune, really. I mean, as a supporter, the most I can do is back our boys, make sure that me and the folks that I care for when it comes to following this national team don't become scumbag netizens, because bottom line, our players are doing their best and we have our fair criticisms. Yeah, sure, but let's leave it at that. Obviously, I would like to see institutional change with the Football Association, but I have no real leads to practically cling on, and I will be sifting through everyone's voices and opinions in hopes that there are going to be changes. But with all that being said, man, like, it's been a fun Asian Cup. I've never seen this type of like two-home ball from Korea. Us coming back, I think 3 games with goals in injury time is just a mad thing to experience. It was a privilege to experience it with the Fighting Stripes Collective and the folks that were on with us with the watch along. Hope everyone's here to stay, sticking with the Fighting Stripes, because we will be continuing to follow Korean football news, and I think that we're the premier space for English-speaking Korean football news. So all I can say is that I'm grateful that we have our collective of Korean football lovers. The best we can do is just back our boys, because as supporters, that's what you should do.
Before we go, Albert, you want to like plug some of the things that's coming to the Bib and Ballers channel coming soon?
Yes, guys. We have our YouTube channels up, obviously known as PB Ballers. It's going to be a busy 2024. We're going to try to get some big names to come on to interview regarding the state of not just Korean football, but Asian football. Hopefully looking into interviews with Kim Panggon, the manager in Malaysia, and Jesse Lingard, who just moved to FC Seoul. These are all potentially in the works, but keep subscribed and your notifications on, and you will see other content coming out. I know Asian football is done internationally in terms of tournaments, but Jason and I and the rest of the boys plan to follow the Euros in the summer. Also, you got Copa America in 2024. At the end of the day, these teams in Europe and North America and South America will be potential opponents for South Korea in 2026. Guys, it's going to be a chaotic 2 years as we ramp up to the crazy festival known as the World Cup. We'll all be preparing for this. To be honest, I don't know if Jurgen Klinsmann's going to make it to then. I hope not. But we will be following along, having regular interviews, live streams, and analysis pieces. Always feel free to leave a comment on our Twitter or YouTube if you have any suggestions for what you want to see on this channel and also in our Substack that Mike does a wonderful job running. Just keep an eye on us. We'll always be around and we'll be here to give you the latest. And Mike, anything last words you want to say before we end the pod here?
Nah, bro. I mean, you did a really good job, like hyping up all the things that we're going to be doing. Honestly, we're grateful, like just like Kevin was talking about, to have this, community around us. We love what we do. We have a lot of fun doing it, and we're going to keep on keeping on, and we're going to support this team, and we'll be along for the ride. And yeah, I guess I do want to say, like, if Jurgen Klinsmann gets fired in the next couple weeks, just keep your eyes out for Jason Lee's just like breakdown of that. I think he's gonna be like celebrating. He's gonna be like having the best time of his life. So that will be a really cool video as well. But other than that, I'm gonna let Albert wrap up. Okay.
All right, guys, that will be the end of the pod. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and Apple Pod. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. And I'll be leaving the personal links for the boys, Kevin and Michael, down in the description. My name is Albert. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you later in March to recap the World Cup qualifiers against Thailand. Until then, everyone, take it easy.